Welcome to the world of Taboo!
The musical came about because I was approached by Chris Renshaw, and to be really honest with you, I mean, he came to me and said, I want to do a musical based on, partly on your book and partly on the story of Lee Bowery, and I was kind of excited because it wasn't the sort of like, you know, Culture Club, you know, Boy George story, because that really didn't appeal to me at the time, because I'd just done 4 years with Culture Club touring and I was over it, and that's what really got me interested, the fact that I could give some of those people who are still around and some of the people who are no longer around, give them a voice, you know, and sort of show that, you know, how in a way we all influenced each other, and there was also little bits that we took from each other, and it was, you know, that's what excited me about the show.
Hi, I'm Julie.
I'm Dawn, and we've seen Taboo
184 times.
Hello everyone! I'm Philip, always the bride, never the groom. I'm not in all the wrong places. I'm one of those faces you'll never forget. Aren't you, Ed?
Philip's sort of quite smutty. Actually, I don't think I should tell you any stories about Philip's salon. I think they're smutty. They're too smutty for consumption.
He has the mind of kind of Freud and the personality of Pippi Longstocking.
I love playing Philip. It's the most fantastic part. I mean, it's everything in there for me. Comedy, serious moments. I get to go out in the audience and interact, have stand-up moments. It's just, you know, it's a brilliant role to play, and I love every minute of it.
The way Paul Baker did it was I came across as the most human person in the musical, definitely. Not that I am.
He doesn't want it to be too camp, that whole sort of like camp thing, and he likes it to be a bit madder and a bit more psychotic, as he calls it. So I think that's probably the way I've tried to portray him.
Where we going? I've got some friends. Filthy squatter types sponging on the government. Now you're lucky. I might put you up for a night or two. Anybody ever told you you've got lovely voice for a big boy?
Paul Baker is one of the pod people. As soon as I woke up one day, there was this pod next to my bed, and then I looked, it was Paul Baker emerging. I thought it was nasty. And I was the pretty version. She came out and just started.
Philip is just one of those things that happen, you know, like a sort of comet or something every sort of few hundred years.
I first met George. I was dancing around what is now called GAY, Got AIDS, yeah. But anyway, in those days it was called Sundown, and it was a pithole even then. Actually, I ran that as the Mud Club years later, but then it was fabulous, of course. And George was staring at me, admiring me from the audience with this girl who was like a token girlfriend, sick. She went mad anyway, but not as mad as him though, or myself. And so, I don't know, we started talking, I saw him watching me, which I like, and then we started talking in the bogs later, and I kindly gave him my phone number, and he called, and we became friends, a friendship based on shallow fashion.
Do you really want to hurt me? Do you really want to make me cry?
Philip came down to the workshop and, you know, sat there grimacing at the actors and making them feel really uncomfortable, annoying the writer. Everybody hated him.
Believe me, I've had a lot of I've written down so many things that they have altered in that musical that you don't know about, untold things. I wrote lists and lists, and I would say about 80% at least has been altered, plus all the one-liners I've given them, and it's made a big difference, but that's my opinion.
One good thing that came out of that was, he said, the guy playing Trojan, which was what Ewan was doing, is you. And I was like, really? I'd never even crossed my mind. And he was like, no, he is definitely you. He reminds me of you when you were 19. And the more he went on about it, the more I sort of started to study Ewan. And then when I finally saw him in the drag, I was like, oh my God, he's got my nose.
I know everything about everything. Philip Shakespeare.
George was around for the whole thing, so he's been in my life for about 2 years now, so coming on and doing this here was relatively easy. I mean, he hasn't told me how to play it or how to do what I should be doing. He kind of was there to help with the relationships that he had with Marilyn and Philip and all that lot. It's been really easy. I mean, George is mental, isn't he? So as long as you can take that, you're absolutely fine.
taking a week.
When I watch that character, it's not me. If I looked and see myself acting like that, I'd kill myself.
Beautiful child in razor heels, that shades into the room. All the boys leave that shower and the mirror soon.
It's caricature.
I mean, I don't know what he's like. I mean, I have no real clue. I have no real, opinion of what he's like or like that. But by all accounts, he's a fucking nightmare.
I don't think I'm that camp.
To be honest, I kind of avoided him because, if somebody comes up to you and says,
dances all that, all like that. It's like, ugh. Poof.
Hello, Marilyn. My God. Come say hello to George O'Dowdy. Oh dear. O'Dowd, actually.
I was with Philip when I met George, but Philip and George weren't speaking at the time.
We had one of our long enduring quarrels.
There was kind of like a vibe between me and George. We wanted to speak to each other, but there was so much peripheral shit going on between him and Philip that our burgeoning friendship got it had to develop outside the confines of the Philip salon. What's the word? Philip salon nuclei.
And then it was like Marilyn was going, I've just been speaking to good friend George. Boring. Anyway, hoping it would wind me up, which it did.
I met Marilyn when he was like 15 or so. He was a little boy, really. And he used to come to the Blitz, and I used to actually let him stay at my house. And all my house was just full of powder. And sort of, that time with the wigs and when he was really properly Marilyn, And, she used to come along and always make quite a lot of drama.
What's she know about drama? Silly bitch. I have not got a peanut under my buffon. Marilyn. 1 and 1's 3.
Marilyn, no, I don't. He got on TV and he goes, Philip Salon is ugly, ugly, ugly. But it wasn't a joke. He just kept saying it. And the more I saw it on TV, the more it annoyed me.
No, I don't dislike Philip. He's the one that's got the problem, not me. I like him. He's wildly entertaining.
I do enjoy his company. I think he's a real laugh. He's funny. He's like Benny Hill in drag.
I don't fall out with anybody.
Somebody once said to me about Marilyn, once he latches onto you, he will never let go.
He still knows how to get money out of me.
Poor Marilyn. Is he still on drugs or what's his trouble? What's he on?
Marilyn's supposed to be the sort of dark Boy George, the sort of sexual Boy George, the more androgynous Boy George, and he sort of enlisted Paul Kaplan, who managed Hazy Fantasy, to make that happen.
Career? What career?
I hear you on the radio.
There was a bit of jealousy, because I felt that, he was trying to capture what I was doing rather than do something of his own.
I wouldn't be able to function if it was all like competing and all that. I don't like all that.
So yeah, there was lots of petty bitching, and I used to kind of do things to sabotage him and stuff. I remember this one time where I found out that he was going to wear a kilt on some TV show, and I was doing Michael Parkinson, and I went out and bought kilts for the whole band, which is a bit pathetic, really. I mean, now I just think, why did I do that? But you just do those things when you're sort of 20.
Is that what I think it is?
Not be normal.
That's Steve Strange, the man who single-handedly created the New Romantics.
What about Steve Strange?
It's a really fun character to play because there's all of that bitchiness which you get to unleash every night on the unsuspecting public.
I'm definitely not coming in.
Because he was like, when he was doing the Blitz, it was like he was too kind of, it's like he was lording at the door like, oh, I'm running the Blitz.
What happened, Ant? The way gargoyle springs to mind.
The only thing that I didn't like was the fact that they played me like a Welsh coal miner with a very deep Welsh accent, which I'm proud to be Welsh, but I've never ever had a Welsh accent.
He has got a little bit of a Welsh accent.
We created a club which was very, very small, but became very international and spawned a whole scene, not just in Britain, but throughout the whole of Europe as well.
People that were like naff, and all that music was hideous. She's a model and she's looking good. Oh, God.
He was playing music, you know, like Kraftwerk and things, and Giorgio Moroder, and, you know, the music was really, really important.
And like electronic, all that shit. Ugh.
It was a tiny little club. I mean, it was as big as a public conveniences. In fact, it was smaller than a public. In fact, it was a public convenience.
I had Marilyn as a cigarette girl, George as the cloakroom attendant.
George got the sack, I think, for stealing from bags. She was done with cheap. No, it wasn't always, but anyway, it was her cheap period.
I sort of made up for it by buying everyone in the house breakfast the next morning at Sam's Cafe and sort of buying people makeup.
I used to work there picking up glasses. So it's like, that was a job to me.
I used to walk around all night going, doesn't Steve Strange look a cunt? I used to say it to everyone there. But I mean, it was just my way of making conversation.
I was always falling in and out of favour with Steve Strange. You know, he would decide one week that I was, you know, de rigueur and, you know, I'd have a good haircut or something. I was particularly good look that I was working, which he'd always steal.
It was very much like who could get the best outfit, who could look the most outrageous, and it was very competitive.
He looked great, actually, before nature ravaged him. How cruel time can be. How old is he, anyway?
I do consider George a very good friend now as well, because now he's not as bitchy and he's much nicer now.
Bitchy? Him calling me bitchy? I mean, that's the joke of the century.
The nails were a lot shorter, let's say, now these days. And I just find him a lot more sort of calming now, I think, you know. But in them days, I did used to keep myself at a distance because I knew that as soon as I left the room, there'd be a knife in my back.
She's somewhere between farty and death.
Come on, come and join us. Come and join all the right people.
The New Romantics was more, it was really the way that we all live from day to day.
The whole show is really about the search for, you know, acceptance by a bunch of people who felt ostracised, you know, from their families, from their environment, and all came together in the heart of London and sort of created a sort of alternative family of freaks, you know.
I think it was a sort of backlash, really, to the sort of punky thing that had got sort of really kind of mainstream.
But there wasn't a new... I mean, the New Romantic thing was really weak. I mean, people managed to call themselves punk rockers. I don't think you ever heard anyone saying, I'm a New Romantic.
Give me a freak, any day of the week. I'm comfortable with those you call demented. Give me a freak, not someone make. With space between their ears that can be rented.
In the early and mid-80s, you know, there was a lot of unemployment and people were quite skint.
When the ship's going down, people want to party harder.
And so you had to make your own entertainment.
Andrew Logan's having a party, 3 canapes. Then we'll blitz get dressed, glam up. And if you're lucky, exchange bodily fluids with complete and utter strangers.
Fashion-wise, it was a time of, like, experimentation.
We weren't working, and so we would spend all day planning outfits to go out in. And it was all about getting ready for the nightclub.
If you didn't look outrageous, you weren't allowed in.
You got it wrong. You got it right. You've got a lot to learn.
Anything to get a new look. Couldn't really wear things twice.
It was a mishmash of looks, but it was still quite sort of handmade looking in a way.
I used to wear these glasses, which were very much based on Dame Edna Etheridge glasses, because I had to wear glasses a lot at that time. And then I'd wear these swimming caps on top of one another, which was stuffed inside one another to get lots of nice height, with chainmail hanging off and dog collars and diamantes studded in.
Boys wearing makeup, girls wearing makeup, lots of makeup, piled on makeup.
I used to go to get the milk on the corner shop in drag. And I used to step out, I'm not going out. I've got my makeup on.
It wasn't us dressing up to go out. We were like that 24/7. Whatever I wore on top of the pops or in videos, I would wear that out in the day.
Yes? Oh, can I help you?
Why do you work here?
Do you actually want anything? Like a purchase, perhaps?
The Selfridges thing, from what I can remember, is quite actually as it happened.
Can I try some then? Does it come as aftershave?
Oi! What's that one?
It's a facial cleansing bar for anti-aging.
Really? And do you use it?
Yes, and I use the entire range.
Well, it's a pity it doesn't fucking work then, isn't it?
Steve was making music with Rusty and Midure, and he was quite sort of, you know, very serious about it and, you know, quite excited about it. And they had this song, Fade to Grey.
George gets very sensitive. He says, you know, it's only tongue-in-cheek, it's only tongue-in-cheek. It's like warning you before you go in, like thinking like you're going to have a prima donna fit or something.
So I'm going to flop, so I'm going to pull that off then. No brains, looks, or
Fade to Grey. And
When it came to making the video, they just asked me if I'd do the rendition. So that's how it happened, really. Of course, I couldn't really speak French at all. Maybe that's why they put a curtain over my head.
And then the Blitz died a death, really, didn't it? And the Mud Club happened, which was my club, which everybody went to, and it was fabulously important.
I remember one night I turned up at the Mud Club, and it was really at the height of my kind of successful culture club. And I came in and I was sort of chatting to people I know and Mark Moore and stuff, and I heard Philip going running up to him going, "Boy George is here." And he always goes on about he's not impressed by fame, but she is.
The musical sort of blends two different movements together. It was actually, the Blitz was sort of around 79, the sort of Steve Strange and all that, early 80s, and Taboo was actually sort of 85 or so, 84, 85, I do believe. It was around the time of Halley's Comet, I remember that much.
Taboo was a nightclub that was run by Lee Barry, who was married to my sister Nicola.
I used to make up, because I used to type the guest list up for him. You go, put these names on it, ridiculous people he's put on there, like Joan Collins, Des O'Connor. You know, really rubbishy people who never go. And just so, when they gave the guest list in to the doorman, they'd laugh and think that Des O'Connor was coming down.
It wasn't that busy to start with, then all of a sudden it just became the place to be.
It's the story Lee made up, that someone had been turned away one week, and then to make herself even more beautiful, she'd starved herself so much that when she got to the door, she was so hungry she passed away and died.
Everybody in the house, Lee Barry!
I would describe Lee as a notoriously wicked liar and a naughty little boy.
Well, I think he wanted to be a fashion designer, but he really didn't really like sewing that much and everything. And really all his clothes were a rip-off of Vivienne Westwood anyway. So he decided to have these new ideas, and first of all, he didn't want to wear them himself, so he made his friend Trojan wear them.
And then when he realised how much attention Trojan was getting, he didn't like that, you know, and he started dressing up and it just escalated, as it does in that way. He really, really wanted people to know who he was, and one way of doing that was by being extreme. generally speaking, pushed all the boundaries of what one would think was fashion into a completely different dimension.
You know, his whole life really was entertainment. I mean, if you see someone walking down the road dressed as a birthday cake, you're going to mention it to your friends, aren't you?
It was Lee that really kind of led the way, you know, with his looks, and I think that he was such an inspiration to people there, and they thought, you know, he looks like that, well, you know, I'm going to do my own thing.
If he'd done a performance, I would always go up and say it was really good, and Lee would always go, oh, thank you, Boy George, I really value your opinion, and then walk off. And you were never quite sure if he was sort of taking the piss out of you or actually he meant it.
I think he was jealous of George as well, very jealous, because he was famous in the way that Lee would like to be.
And he had to make a few clothes for George, and he used to get so excited when he was coming around the house, going, oh, I can't believe it, Boy George came to my house. But of course, when Boy George came round, he'd act really cool and pretend it was everyday occurrence.
When Lee made a costume for George, he would try to make him look as large as possible. I don't think George actually clocked onto it. He would kind of like pad out things and emphasise parts of the body that he knew that George wanted actually to be covered up.
The thing is, I knew that he'd made the clothes to make me look fatter, and I'd said to people, he's made these deliberately to make me look bigger.
It was like Lee's way of getting back at George for whatever crime George did, but I don't know what crime he did, be more famous than him. He got to really love his body, but I think it took him quite a long time, because when I've read his early diaries when he first moved to London from Australia, he was constantly on these diets.
Just to see this guy, you know, kind of out, you know, sort of, you know, with sort of belts around his belly to make it look bigger, and, you know, just, I found him physically brave.
He realised that actually he could manipulate his body quite nicely with various fashions and flatter himself more in that way.
You know, by the end, when he started getting dressed up so freaky, I couldn't bear going out with him, because it was like you couldn't even have a conversation, because he had a great big thing on his head. I don't like that. I like to go and have a nice chat.
Well, I have a very strong belief in myself and in the sort of truth of my vision and being true to myself, and that sort of sustains me through some tricky patches.
George, Marilyn and I were like the carry-on end of the market. Do you know what I mean? It was like all kind of, you know, the one-liners and, you know, just coming out with things. And Lee Barry was more like, I would never speak to anybody that wasn't dressed up.
My thing with Lee was just, it felt very real.
Different people have played his different, you know, played Lee, and some are better than others.
The power of shocking people is something I'm not a stranger to.
He would be very, very amused to know that George was playing him.
Chris Renshaw, the director, kept saying to me, you could play Lee, and I was like, oh, you know, I mean, just the idea of, you know, I mean, singing on stage is one thing, I have no kind of fear about that, but to actually act, the thought of it really terrified me. I just thought, oh, I can't do it. And then, like most things in my life, I kind of say no, and then I sort of thought, well, actually, why not?
He really does throw himself into the role, and I think really focuses on the sort of really outrageous, intimidating side of Lee that you would see in the nightclubs. Basically, that's what most people saw of Lee. Didn't see him behind the scenes.
I've stuck to this sort of like the original Lee Barry designs for all the other people that play Lee Barry, you know, like the stand-ins and things like that, because they're comfortable within that realm as well. But with George, yes, it's sort of like it grew because I think both of us felt that it would have done if Lee had been actually there.
For me, it's been quite physically liberating, and it's also sort of got me back into kind of wearing more makeup. I think that's the funny bit of it, because it's like, you know, I mean, normal drag anyway, you change. You know, when I dress up normally, I change because you sort of become the persona that people expect you to be. I think dressed as Lee, you become even more horrible, you know, and I don't seem to mind kind of telling people to fuck off when I dress like this.
To keep it in the sort of like the true tradition of Lee Barry, it was good that it kind of like had a life, it was still growing and it's still in involvement and stuff like that, because he never did the same look more than once, really. You know, if he did, you know, it was a bad day for him.
Tonight, and one night only, we're going to the heart of London's art world, where my dear friend Lee Barry is appearing as an art exhibit. Thank you.
I wanted the song to be self-contained, you know, like things like Ich bin Kunst, you know, which in a way kind of sums up Lee without having to go into the whole, you know, the whole story about him coming to London and working in Burger King, which is originally what we did in the script.
Don't you see? Look at you! There! Look at me! I am art!
I decided that really the interesting thing about Lee was how fantastic he looked, and that was, who cares what he looked like before, you know? So in writing that song, we kind of managed to encapsulate that whole kind of journey of Lee's from Australia and, you know, the impending madness that he wreaked on London nightlife.
Meanwhile, in a dark recess lurks.
There's a scene in Taboo where Lee's in a cottage. I mean, his first scene, he's in the toilet. It's quite true.
Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the biggest freak of all? I've had a man or two. In fact, I've had a few. In dark and dingy places.
The whole kind of triumph of having a man or two in dark and dingy places, I understand that, the value of that in terms of living in the moment.
And I never asked their names. Hungry faces in the dark, dirty deeds in the park. And before you ask, I feel no shame.
So, you know, his sex life was strangers he met in toilets.
He was a fan of all cottages. In fact, he could have written a book on them, I think, because he seemed to know the best ones.
Well, I was rimmed recently in the public lavatories here, and that was so special for me because I don't usually have sexual contact because of the way I look. People are kind of slightly horrified about my appearance, and they don't want to have sort of intimate contact with me. But somebody, I don't know, maybe they mistook me for a lavatory.
We had plenty of sex, but not much romance.
Hello, Philip! Still living in the past.
Hello, Lee. Still curdling the milk of human kindness.
I do so admire how you manage all those stairs at your age, dear. And how you make a classical look seem, well, far from fresh.
Silence, fool. You're consuming my oxygen.
Lee did not like Philip Salon at all. No idea why he hated him so much. I think the feeling was quite mutual. I don't think Philip liked him particularly either.
He started being insulting to me. He used to come out with these just really naff things. I can't remember what he used to say, but when I used to see him, I just used to come up to him and go, "You're a fat, ugly bastard." And he used to go, "Oh, I like that. Very nice." You know, which kind of was the right thing for him to say, actually. He knew all the right triggers to press to annoy me.
Philip's son had always gone, "Why is he so mean to me?" And all I could do was pat him on the back.
In those days, you could press a number and make your own phone ring. So you used to do that all the time when you were there and have these long conversations with mystery people, and you think that, and then they go, "Oh, that was Steve Strange, actually. Oh, yeah, that was Boy George ringing me." And all these people, and it was just him talking to himself.
Towel! And dry. Gently, gently, you know, delicate my skin is.
Handily.
Every crack, indent, and hidden recess, bar none. Stop fingering me, see? Oh, you do have to touch, though.
Oh, thank you, Lee. I do try my best.
When the script was initially being written, it was quite important that I wasn't portrayed as one of his slaves. It was apparent that she was his best friend.
Because I went to work and that, I couldn't really be a slave.
These are his slaves, and they do as he says.
Do you love me without condition?
Without question or condition.
I remember he had this girl called Jill, who was also known as Bucket Jill, that apparently she combusted.
What is love?
Oh, it's a bit vague. I think it's sort of so many different things with so many people. Sometimes love is a warm puppy on a cold night. I think it's never having to say sorry. I mean, love's so many different things.
We were on the way home in a car, in the cab, and he said, "Nicola," he said, "I know this isn't exactly the time and place to ask you," he said, "but will you marry me?" I said, "Yeah, all right then." I said, "Good." He said, you arrange it. Because I had to sort everything out. And as we were going through the dates, it was Friday the 13th, May. Went perfect, Friday the 13th. And he brought me an opal ring, which was also bloody unlucky. And it was, wasn't it? He died 9 months later.
Oh, go away, Big Sue. Can't you see I'm busy?
There, you know the appointment's today, St Mary's.
This is my only appointment.
The doctor, he says he needs to talk about the results of your blood tests. It's no use denying it me. It won't get any better on its own.
Tell the quacks I'm otherwise engaged.
You know, before he was ill, he used to have a couple of days where he did nothing, laid around, you know, just chit-chat. But after that, when he knew, he just like worked all the time.
Sensitive boy, good with his hands. No one mentions the unmentionable, but everybody understands.
It's very sad when she sings a sad song, and I always have a tear when I see it.
It makes me cry.
It's hard to imagine him as he used to be.
What's going to happen to you after you die?
Oh, grief. Well, it's a living that I'm more interested in. Sort of every moment, I think, you know, when I'm dead, I'm, you know, gone, and, you know, that's other people's problems.
I heard he died fat, although he had AIDS, and I thought you were supposed to get skinny on AIDS. I suppose there must have been so much fat. But anyway, but I don't wish to be nasty.
What drugs do you take?
No drug all the time. I mean, I suppose my most regular thing would perhaps be, well, to use a Boy George phrase, I'm quite keen on tea and, you know, tannin and caffeine. They're my sort of thing. They're my most regular drugs.
George was very, very anti-drugs, and one night, one New Year's Day, my mum was doing a New Year's dinner for, there was people like the Rolling Stones in my house, Madness, the Bell Stars, and George came over, and me, Keith Richards and Ronnie Wood kept disappearing into the bedroom. And every time we came out, George would give us a lecture. So when I found out that George was on drugs, it was like the biggest shock to me ever.
That's absolute rubbish. I remember actually sitting in the bedroom and going, my God, I'm doing drugs with all the Rolling Stones. This is so bizarre.
When it comes to harmful substances, getting like that with them, it scared me.
Well, the two things kind of go together, really, drugs and Marilyn. Drugs and Marilyn, smuttiness, gossip.
We'd be out in the limelight in New York, and it'd suddenly have like a bag of ecstasies. But like most people buy a couple, you'd buy like 300. And a bag of ecstasies like that. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why have you? And he'd write a check. It cost so much money. It was like I had to write a check out for him.
Mary Templar's peckle, fresh in from New York. Come on, matey, you'll feel like you can touch the universe.
And then he'd walk around the club, and there'd be like, you know, like a speedboat goes through water, and there's like a wake behind the boat. That's how, when you walk through the club, that's how it was with people instead of the water. And they were like, it's like a trail of people like behind him, like the Pied Piper, and he's handing out these like smarties to people, and like, everyone's like, I love you, I love you. It's scary. I just keep saying, calm down. It's like, what are you doing? You know.
It's strange that Marilyn's got any recollection of that period anyway, because I mean, he was so twatted out of his brains anyway.
Boy Gorge has lost the plot massively. Oh yeah. She's had a couple of these and now she's snorting away like a depraved truffle ant. Laters!
But those two fuckers, they went on this, they were really bad for each other. They went on this hedonist mission. I mean, it was really bad news.
George, fuck up.
Do you know what I mean? They just couldn't stop, so they just destroyed each other.
I think there were times when Marilyn did try to stop. I think we both tried to stop, but you know, I think we were just as bad as each other really in terms of being destructive, you know, because sometimes like Marilyn decided that he wanted to be clean, and then I'd turn up and rock the apple cart, and then vice versa, really.
See, that's not, to me, if you're a friend to somebody, you want to take drugs. If you're a friend, you don't do it with a friend because you're both destroying each other. So they weren't friends of each other. If they were under a delusion, they weren't.
Bitch. Where's the stash? I need another hit.
That was the only time I ever had an ecstasy in my life. George came up and goes, you want a drink, have a drink.
The ecstasy at that time was very kind of, it made you feel really kind of, that you loved everyone, and I really just felt that Philip needed a bit of help, you know, because he was so bitter.
But he was off his head. I forgave him after about a year.
I felt very bad about that, but I mean, you know, he had a really good night. I mean, he shaved his whole body. He paid for a prostitute to come up from Brighton, and Marilyn actually said that he had a conversation with Philip from America, and he said it was the nicest he'd ever been in his entire life. He couldn't believe it. He said it was like there was a real person in there.
I did enjoy the experience, unfortunately. That was the sad thing. It was very nice. I was trying not to enjoy it. Like, it went on for a day. She must have put a lot in it.
We're doing a little favour for George. It's his last performance, we believe, for the Taboo performance. So we're here just to kind of say hi and, you know, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, all that kind of stuff. We've got some food for himself, some vegetarian food and some flowers from the temple.
I'd always sort of been interested in the Hare Krishnas because of the way they looked. I just thought it was such an interesting look.
Harry Seagull, Harry Corbett, Harry Corbett.
Philip, you want to stand at the edge of that pool?
As if Harry Ramsden, Harry Ramsden. Come on, George, sing along. You used to be a pop star.
I mean, if you're a kind of Christian or sort of any other religion that isn't associated with any style, you can kind of pass by unnoticed. But I always think that they're kind of like spiritual punks in a way, because it's a very extreme look and it gets extreme reactions. And I'd always wanted to go and find out what they were about.
From Bombay to Bangalore, all the Hindus know the score. If you wanna live some more, Hare, Hare, Hare.
Going to India and spending time with them was quite good for me because it was after a very serious drug addiction, so it was a good escape for me. And I think the only downside of that is that it became a sort of another drug, really. And I'd go around telling everybody they needed to be spiritual. I think really for me spirituality is in the mundane, you know, it's really more about how you buy a pint of milk, you know, rather than wrapping your legs around your head and going on in a cave in the middle of nowhere. I think it's more about kind of what you do in this world, and I think you can be more spiritual by actually staying around and doing something useful. I mean, cleaning out a river's more spiritual than doing yoga, as far as I'm concerned. I have no desire to leave the material world, I like it.
Thank you for leaving. Use my number, good night, God bless. Hare Krishna.
If George ever does a sequel or another show, it should be set backstage.
Once I saw Ewan taking Paul Baker's either makeup sponge or his powder puff or a brush or something and sticking it up his bottom or rubbing it on his ghoulies.
It's fascinating. It's a whole show in itself.
It's not a good place to upset people.
I've never ever experienced a room with 10 people who have spent 9.5 months chatting and arguing and getting over it and talking about gossip, talking about shit.
Steve Strange's real, 100% genuine snakeskin coat.
That coat cost me £15,000.
George stole it off him because he stole his credit card.
Working backstage was absolutely hectic. The boys' dressing room was also the wardrobe room, and it was also the makeup and wig room, so everything was crammed into this tiny little space.
I'm sharing a dressing room with, you know, 10 to 12 other men, boys actually, you couldn't really call them men, could you? And, you know, after the first 2 days, you know, you just kind of have to get over the whole, you know, sort of dignity thing, you know, and sort of you just have to let it all hang out, basically.
John, this cameraman here's a bit too interested in your...
My mangina. No knickers for me. No, I'm serious, my knickers have been stolen. Have you stolen them?
Darling.
Have you got my knickers on? Who would want your rank knickers?
Someone's taken them to sniff them.
Yeah.
Are there no other knickers I can wear here, like someone else's?
You cannot be introverted. You can't really be miserable. Everyone's dressing up and painting their face, and the conversations which you take for granted after a few days. But last night, for example, there was a discussion about having sex in lifts and who'd done that, whether you spit or swallow, inserting hamsters up your arse. This was all just in the course of 20 minutes, all done very casually. it's very funny.
Make sure you focus a lot on Christine because she's been drinking.
Don't focus on me.
And the tattoo's out, and that's a sign that she's in a provocative mood. So when Christine drinks, the eyebrows don't always stay on.
It reminds me of what it must have been like, you know, in vaudeville days, in the kind of dressing room of the chorus girls. It's very funny, very energising. And if you're not in the right mood, it's also quite exhausting. But that's showbiz for you. You have to get yourself in the right mood.
Going to Broadway, Cricklewood Broadway.
What I saw when I saw the show, first of all, I saw it like 5 times. People stood up every time. The music is unbelievable. The true life story, which I knew and then since read about Sue Tilley and Nicola and Lee, I felt with a real play that emphasized those real characters, and not to discredit the play that's there because people are standing up every night. But if we infused it with more reality, it's going to be overwhelming.
I met Rosie O'Donnell. Now, I had this meeting with her and a scriptwriter called Charles Bush. No relation to George, although she might be. Anyway, yeah, the camp son. Anyway, I must have been in that hotel room 40 seconds, I swear to you. And she came out with a statement. She goes to me, "You know, I'm worth $100 million. I thought, well, that's an odd thing to say, because you've only just met anyone for 40 seconds, but still. But anyway, but she was very friendly.
The heart of the show is going to be the same, but it's going to be rewritten. We take a lot of what Mark did, and Mark Davies, I think, very talented man, wonderful job he did. And we have Charles Bush now, who's unbelievably amazing, award-winning playwright in America, as well as a performer. And he had some great ideas to add to what Mark had, and we're going to collaborate the two and, you know, take the real-life story of Lee and Nicola and George and Sue Tilley and sort of Philip Salon and make it a little bit more Broadway without losing the essence or the heart.
I just cannot imagine how anybody is going to play me. And I don't know how I'm going to come across, hopefully not as a doormat.
I would love to, like, after the first cast has their chance, I would love to play Sue Tilley.
Yeah, when I met Rosie O'Donnell, she said, she sort of stood next to me and goes, "Oh, I'm about the same size as you." I'm sure she's about half my size, so I was a bit thrilled with that. She was under that illusion. I think she was just being nice. But, you know, I think she'd probably be more me than the girl is now. But I think she's saying about she'd probably make the part a bit bigger, wouldn't she?
I mean, the big difference about Broadway is it's going to be in a great big Broadway theatre. You know, 1,200 seats on Broadway. You know, the whole caboodle, the whole lights, cameras, actions. And in the moment, we're in what amounts to a church hall. You know, so it's going to be different.
It's so thrilling to be able to finally do totally what you want to do.
So, you know, I'd love to go and I want it to be great and I want it to be successful, but not at the kind of loss of the integrity of the show or, you know, I'm not Madonna.
I think at the moment, in terms of clubbing and in terms of music, we're in a real kind of transition period. I mean, in London, there's only really one club that's worth going to, and that's Nag Nag Nag. It's the only place where I can sort of dance and, you know, the music's quite varied.
There are like 16, 17, 18-year-old kids who are doing looks that, you know, we did that long ago.
All right, okay, this is a new era. Am I part of this new era? Brilliant.
How old are you?
25.
Oh, you're okay, you're part of the new era.
Things do go round in a 20-year cycle and full circle, and I think the time is coming around to that now again.
Because thank God there are people that they want to do stuff, you know.
That club's run by, you know, my sort of really good old friend Johnny Slart, who's been my friend since those goth days.
It's a really great club, having a really great time. It's all right. Can I go now?
His club is fantastic, and it really reminds me of being 17 again.
And there was a Taboo, and then there was Kinky Galinky, and then now there's Nag Nag Nag, and then there was working on Taboo at the same time. So it's like, you know, I feel actually, you know, I'm stuck in a time warp, and I actually don't mind that one single bit.
But it's a place people can come and express themselves. I mean, you know, there's some fashionistas and, you know, there's some gay boys, there's some gay girls, and there's some everybody. Like, I mean, if you want to wear your craziest outfit, this is where to wear it.
My mama encourages me to dress like this. My mama is ghetto trash from Dudley.
I think that there is a whole new wave of kind of young kids who are realising that they're being kind of manipulated by record companies.
I think there needs to be more fun, there needs to be more yellow, more makeup, you know. I don't know. I don't see Destiny's Child and all that shit, I really don't.
So where are the true artists? Where are?
Well, that's why clubs like that are going really good, because
that's why it's all starting again.
I hope that it's going to be the beginning of some new kind of, teenage sort of rebellion, or just a kind of, young people to sort of immerse themselves in ideas.
Because I think that actually Taboo being on the stage has had an effect.
Drag is back, glam is back, these are George's words, you know what I mean? It's back, and in some ways I think drag is dragged back.
It made people realise what fun we had with all that dressing up in the 80s.
But also, people like Galliano, and there are people that have kind of taken influences from the show, or at least been kind of reminded of what Lee did, and that's kind of inspired them to do that.
Totally, yeah, and I think, John Galliano definitely, he pushed his models out down the catwalk with blue faces, and, that whole Package from Outer Space look was kind of revisited by him in a very couture way, and I thought it was beautiful what he did. And also there was like a beer poster, where they had the kind of the drips coming down, the model's face, and I think it has had all those, it's definitely had a knock-on effect.
I think the last thing I want to say is that Marilyn is genius. His ability to get money out of me, even at this point in my life, is quite phenomenal.
Is there anything else you want to add or say? Or?
Yeah, when do I get paid? Have you got cash for me? Have you got cash for me? No, I'm supposed to get 300. I am. What are you laughing for? Bitch. I'm supposed to get 300. I'm not signing that. No. I'm going home. Bye. I'm not signing you.
Sign that for Don't stop.
I said, you got cash for me? She said, no. I said, oh, my phone.
You got £200 last night.
You said 3 on the phone.
You...
I gotta go.
Did you sign up for...
No!